Hey, this is Chad with Drawn and Cornered. It is October 19th, 2021, and here are the news stories for today. We got a big day, so stick up. First off, China launched a hypersonic missile that is capable of doing 20,000 miles per hour, maybe a little bit more, circled the Earth, and then crash landed a couple of dozen miles away from its target. Now, the intelligence community here in the US is floored by this. It's talked about as like another Sputnik moment. We were totally caught off guard. We were not prepared for this. And it could potentially start a new arms race because this missile is apparently nuclear capable, which allows China to deliver a nuclear weapon anywhere in the world in just a few minutes. It can also defeat our current defense systems against this, which is the Ballistic Missile Defense System, or Star Wars, because it can come from anywhere. It can travel around the world. It no longer has to go over the top and come from the south side and go east, west, whatever, and still be on target in a matter of minutes, which begs the question of what do we do now? And I think we may have already given our answer. So on their side, China has said that they have denied this already. They said that this is not something that's currently happening. It's just an aircraft that they launched. It has no weapon capabilities or weapon intent. However, they also went on to say that this is a blow to U.S. strategic superiority. So one of those two things has to probably not be true. And again, it's China, so take it for what it's worth, a grain of salt. Whether or not they want to strap a nuclear warhead to it is, I would argue, kind of inconsequential. The capability that it even exists means that we have to start paying attention to it. The White House has not commented on the test specifically, though Jen Psaki has remarked specifically that this administration always welcomes competition. I don't know what that means. I don't know why that would be considered a good thing. As we are looking to cut defense spending and cut the military and essentially wipe out significant majorities or significant amounts of the military through vaccine mandates, China seems to be ramping up, going the exact opposite direction. So we may have to answer that call. We're also seeing that this is kind of a shot across the bow for Taiwan. Over the past few weeks, China has been flying into Taiwan airspace, kind of asserting their might a little bit, kind of asserting themselves over Taiwan. They lost Hong Kong already, or we lost Hong Kong. Hong Kong lost itself back to China during the Trump administration. So this is not necessarily even a partisan issue. We have been allowing China to expand and grow its capabilities for a while now. If I was in Taiwan, I would either, one, be getting out or be extremely spooked right now, because apparently nobody wants to step in and tell China to back off and stop doing what they're doing. Taiwan's probably next one in the sights. So whether or not Joe Biden's got an answer for that is sort of curious. We'll get to that in just a second. Now, I would argue that COVID ties into this as well. But the way that I'm going to have to talk about this in no way has been altered or changed by YouTube's policies on censorship and banning. Everything I'm about to tell you is completely honest and completely true, and especially aligns up with the way YouTube wants this all talked about. So I am not going to talk about the fact that if China were interested in upsetting the world in a way that allows them to seize more power and kind of take control, COVID would be a terrible way to do that. COVID would not be something that China would want to do in order to be able to grant themselves more power, more capability, or kind of upset the balance that exists out there. That would be a terrible idea. The fact that this comes from a lab is also totally ridiculous. That could not possibly be true, even though, as The Atlantic had written just a few months ago, that the latest piece of evidence that came out this week in the form of a set of Merkle sourced PDFs with their images a bit askew. The main one purports to be an unfunded research grant proposal from Peter Daszak, the president of the EcoHealth Alliance, a global nonprofit focused on emerging infectious diseases that was allegedly submitted to DARPA in early 2018, subsequently rejected, for $14.2 million project aimed at diffusing the threat of bat-borne coronaviruses. Released earlier this week by a group of guerrilla lab snoops called Drastic, the proposal includes a plan to study potentially dangerous pathogens by generating full-length infectious bat coronaviruses in a lab and inserting genetic features that could make coronaviruses better able to infect human cells. That's gain-of-function research. It definitely didn't happen. I want to be very clear to YouTube, to the audience, that certainly is not even a possibility that we're looking at. The WHO doesn't believe it. The CDC doesn't believe it. The White House definitely doesn't believe it. But I want to let you know that even though these documents exist and have been found and talked about, don't worry, it definitely didn't happen, and the Chinese definitely didn't have a ton to gain by allowing something like this to happen. Even when it comes to their mortality rates, don't believe in any way that they were prepared for something like this and perhaps knew that they could exercise their preparedness to screw up the rest of the world. Don't worry about the fact that China, as of right now, has essentially one of the lowest deaths per 100,000 in the world, even though they carry more people than many other countries, that they have tight population centers, that Wuhan is actually where it was begun. It is the source of this. Don't worry, China has a 0.35 out of 100,000 death rate, which is below even New Zealand, which was considered kind of a model for the best way to keep death rates low. Where that ends up in the future, we'll see. But in no way should that be used as any sort of evidence or possibility that China was uniquely positioned to take advantage of COVID and how it worked out. Don't let anybody say that to you, especially this channel. Don't believe it. YouTube, I want to be very frank about this. Nobody on this channel or any other could possibly be thinking that the lab leak was something that could help China or is even a potential possibility. It could not happen, even though many sources that are liberal-minded have also said that it's a possibility. I don't believe them. And I'm certainly not telling you that that's what's happening. Not what's happening. Now, this is the issue. Joe Biden has shown weakness across the board since he started his administration. China, looking to gain a bigger foothold in the world, is going to exploit that. Anytime there's a power vacuum out there, somebody's going to step in. China is in a great position to try and do that. And they have to do it, given their economic issues, the fact that the country by and large is just not really, it's not set up to be able to grow without acquisition and kind of toppling and tumbling of other parties. This is a great opportunity to upset the way that the U.S. is on the broad market and kind of take over. You'll see the same type of activities from Russia, Iran, China. That's why also the minute that we stepped out of Afghanistan, Russia, Iran, and China swooped in and tried to do whatever they could to kind of help out the Taliban and become buddy-buddy, because our failure seemingly is a win for them. So unless Joe Biden changes something, which I don't think he's going to, I believe Joe Biden has sort of already raised the white flag on this. He's not going to compete with Russia when it comes to oil. He's not going to compete with China when it comes to the economics. He's just not going to push hard against them. Whether or not, and again, YouTube, I'm not saying this is even a possibility, but whether or not that has anything to do with Hunter Biden's dealings with China or all the money that's out there, or whoever the big guy happened to be that money was slated for, I don't want to talk about that because I don't believe it. I don't think anybody else out there believes it. And YouTube, I definitely am not saying that that's a possibility for where this all went up. So don't think that I'm saying that, because I am certainly not. But Joe Biden has already lost this fight before it's even begun, unless a 180-degree turn happens from any one of these significant events. And I don't see that happening, because it hasn't happened with any of the other significant events that have come across. He has no ability to pivot. He has no ability to adjust. He has no ability to do anything other than puff his chest against Trump, but not our actual adversaries. So we'll see what happens. The last one is a local story, local for me, but local at least to this country. All last year, when everything was going on about institutional racism and systemic racism, I often came down on the side that systemic racism didn't exist anymore. You could not find codified law, codified policies, because that's been illegal since the Civil Rights Act of '64. It's been illegal since then, so you would not find that in our laws. And whether or not there was racism in individuals or even different organizations that were out there in more subtle ways or kind of under the table ways, worth discussing, but you could not find it in law, which means it's not institutional or it's not systemic. I was wrong. Found it. It's out there. Just this weekend, the Federal Appeals Court has decided to side with University of North Carolina with their affirmative action rules when it comes to admissions. And they said specifically that the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill may continue using race as a factor in its admission process. A federal judge ruled on Monday, rejecting the argument of a conservative nonprofit legal group that is trying to dismantle college affirmative action policies across the country. In her ruling, which came down decidedly against the plaintiff, Judge Loretta C. Biggs said that the university's use of race in deciding which students to admit was narrowly tailored and that the university had made an effort to consider race-neutral alternatives. This is an actual quote. Quote, while no student can or should be admitted to this university or any other based solely on race, she wrote, because race is so interwoven in every aspect of the lived experience of minority students, to ignore it reduces its importance and measure it only by statistical models, misses important context. So what she's saying is that race can't be the only reason somebody gets in, but it certainly can be a contributing factor for why they get in. Now, I know there's schools of thoughts on this. CRT would say that I'm crazy for even thinking this, but if you were to say that a person's race, if they were white, should be a part of the reason why we accept this student into this university, I would challenge that that would be considered wildly racist, and many people would have a significant problem with it. Now, saying that any other race should or shouldn't get in based on the color of their skin seems like it would have to fall into that same qualification. Now, maybe I'm crazy about that, but if you're saying Asian kids can't get in because of the color of their skin, black kids, brown kids, or anybody else can, partially at least because of the color of their skin, that's institutional racism. That's systemic racism. You can argue whether or not that's a good thing at this point, but that is codified policy of racism. Thank you very much for tuning in. Again, this is Chad with Drawn and Quartered. I'll make sure to have water tomorrow so this doesn't happen. We do videos like this every day of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. A little bit of news, a little bit of analysis, get your day started right, everything that people are going to be talking about. If you like that sort of thing, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell so you get notifications as we release those videos. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you again tomorrow.